May the 15th, 2021. Guys, there's information coming out about the drought in the western half of the U.S. and that things are getting worse. And we did a video about a month or so ago, maybe, about this very thing, and it would affect people from Texas up through California, Oregon, and Washington. But now there's reports that the Oregon-California border is in the worst driest conditions in 127 years. And they're saying this water crisis, again, the California-Oregon border went from dire to catastrophic this week as federal regulators shut off irrigation water to farmers from a critical reservoir and said they would not send extra water to dying salmon downstream or to a half-dozen wildlife refuges that harbor millions of migrating birds each year. In what is shaping up to be the worst water crisis in generations, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation said it would not release water this season into the main canal that feeds the bulk of the massive Klamath reclamation project, marking a first for the 114-year-old irrigation system. The agency announced last month that hundreds of irrigators would get dramatically less water than usual, but a worsening drought picture means water will be completely shut off now. Think about that. The entire region is in extreme or exceptional drought, according to federal monitoring reports, and Oregon's Klamath County is experiencing, again, its driest year in over 100 years. It goes on to say this year's drought conditions are bringing unprecedented hardships to the communities of the Klamath Basin, said Reclamation Deputy Commissioner Camille Touton, calling the decision one of historic consequence. Reclamation is dedicated to working with our water users, tribes, and partners to get through this difficult year and developing long-term solutions for the basin. Now, guys, these tribes, most of them really rely on that coho salmon that's not going to get water into the rivers, not deep enough for spawning. And the shallow water there over the last few years has caused a bacteria buildup that kills the new hatchlings. So that if you project that downstream in time, that really is going to affect that population. When the young die out, it's really hard to get anything else going. It says the canal is a major component of the federally operated Klamath Reclamation Project. It funnels the Klamath River water from the upper Klamath Lake just north of the Oregon-California border to more than 130,000 acres where generations of ranchers and farmers have grown hay, alfalfa, potatoes, and grazed their cattle. Only one irrigation district within the 200,000-acre project will receive any water from the Klamath River system this growing season, just one, and it will have a severely limited supply. The Klamath Water Users Association said this in a statement, that some other farmers rely on water from a different river, and they will also have a limited supply. This just couldn't be worth, said the Klamath Irrigation District President Ty Kluwer. The impacts to our family farms in these rural communities will be off the scale. And guys, in that same statement, they said they would not release any so-called, what they call flushing flows from the same dam on the upper Klamath Lake to bolster the water levels downstream in the lower Klamath River. The river is key to the survival of the coho salmon. It's listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, and in better water years, the pulses of water from this dam kept the river cool and turbulent, the conditions that help the fragile species. But the fish are central to the diet and culture of the Yurok tribe, California's largest federally recognized tribe. The tribe said this week that low flows from drought and from previous mismanagement of the rivers by the federal agency was causing the die-off of the juvenile salmon from a bacterial disease that flourish when the water levels are low. That's what we were talking about. They said a Yurok fish biologists who have been testing the baby salmon in the lower Klamath River are finding that 70% of the fish are already dead in the traps used to collect them, and 97% are affected by the bacteria known as C. shasta. Right now, the Klamath River is full of dead and dying fish on the Yurok reservation, said Frankie Myers, the vice president of the Yurok tribe. This disease will kill most of the baby salmon in the Klamath, which will impact fish runs for many years to come. For salmon people, a juvenile fish kill is an absolute worst scenario. Now, the farmers have reacted with what they're calling disbelief, and just think about it, over 100 years of doing this, and your only means of survival is cut off. It says that as the news of water shut off in the canal spread, a newsletter published by the Klamath Water Users Association, which represents many of the region's farmers, blared the headline, "Worst Day in the History of the Klamath Project." Farmers reportedly already are seeing dust storms that obscure vision for 100 yards, and they're worried about their wells running dry. Now, both your governors in the states, Kate Brown and Gavin Newsom, have declared drought emergencies in the region, and the Bureau of Reclamation has set aside $15 million in immediate aid for the irrigators or the farmers. Another $10 million will be available for drought assistance from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. You have to wonder how much this will affect future production, the payoffs, and the drought. Now, Ben Duval, the president of the Klamath Water Users Association, urged his members to remain peaceful and not let the water crisis be hijacked for other causes. The seasonal allocation are the region's most dramatic development since irrigation water was all but cut off to hundreds of farmers 20 years ago in 2001. Amid another severe drought, the first time farmers' interest took a backseat to the fish and tribes. It says this situation in the Klamath Basin was set in motion more than a century ago when the U.S. government began draining a network of shallow lakes and marshlands, redirecting the natural flow of water and constructing hundreds of miles of canals and drainage channels to create farmland. Homesteads were offered by lottery to World War II veterans. The project turned the region into an agricultural powerhouse. Some of its potatoes farmers supply the In-N-Out Burger, but permanently altered an intricate water system that spans hundreds of miles and from southern Oregon to northern California. And again, you had a lot of wildlife refuges that were affected. And you got different species of fish. But guys, I want to do a report about this because we've talked about the drought. We've talked about some of the effects of grand solar minimum, what we're dealing with. And drought does not have to always do with heat. It can just be a lack of moisture. And thin shields will do it every time as far as our earth shields. But guys, we're watching this. It's going to make the situation much worse with the possibility of famine, and that was one of the topics that we talked about in the video a month or so ago about this drought coming to the west. But pay attention to it, guys. It's time to really keep your heads up and be safe.